guys, how's it going? Okay, so moving on from the Euro 2008 videos, I'm now making other types of videos. One of the current events, one of the issues in the world that has gotten my attention, and has been getting my attention for quite some time now, is the situation in Zimbabwe. If you're not familiar with it, President Mugabe, who's been in power since 1980, I believe, he handed over from the British, even though they had declared independence as early as 1966. He has been in power since 1980, essentially, and for all intents and purposes, he's a dictator. Now, I got a comment on my message to President Mbeki, a South Africa video, and from somebody in South Africa or in Canada who said they were in South Africa or whatever. The point is, he was defending President Mbeki, which, fair enough, okay, great. But he then went on to defend Robert Mugabe, the charlatan president of Zimbabwe, the illegitimate president of Zimbabwe. He should not be president any longer. He lost, I believe about 6 years ago, and lost again this year. But hey, when you're a dictator, you can get away with anything, right? So, problem is, what are we going to do? Are we going to do anything? Well, let's look at Darfur as an example. Sure, there's some organizations, Amnesty International, SaveDarfur.org, that are trying to do things and legitimately trying to help, but those are just small organizations. What are governments going to do? Are governments going to do anything? Well, should we do anything? Should America and Britain do anything about Zimbabwe? Should they do anything about Darfur, Sudan, Chad, what have you? I don't think we should. As much as I want to stick it to Robert Mugabe and say, okay, Mr. Dictator, it's time to leave. I don't think it's our obligation to. I think it's the obligation of countries of Kenya, Zambia, Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique, Angola, South Africa, especially South Africa. And reason why am I picking on South Africa? Well, I'm not picking on South Africa because they are one of the more prosperous countries in Africa and one of the more have established infrastructure. And I feel that they probably have the most to lose if they don't do anything. They have an influx of refugees from Zimbabwe. They have worsening economic issues because of the dire situation in Zimbabwe. And for anybody who's going to deny that there's a problem in Zimbabwe, there is. There is massive inflation. It is out of control. There are literally no farmers, harvesting crops in Zimbabwe. Why? Because of President Mugabe's half-assed idea to kick out all the white farmers and then replace them not with competent black farmers or highly trained black farmers or even moderately trained black farmers, but friends, colleagues, anybody who gave him money. No, okay, you can have this land. Oh, so the farms evaporated. They disappeared. And there's no food. And inflation's out of control. They keep printing more money in higher denominations. Okay? And then the political unrest. There's an election, a free election in a democracy in Zimbabwe. Except there's intimidation. There's beating up. They are arresting the opposition and throwing them in jail with no charges? What are you, George W. Bush? Seriously. I'm just so tired of it. I'm so tired of people like George W. Bush, Robert Mugabe, doing as they please without being beholden to the people. What about the people of Zimbabwe? Those people who are starving, who are struggling, who are dying now in their 30s because the life expectancy has dropped dramatically in just the last 5-10 years. because there is no food, there is no medicine, there is no aid. It is absolutely ridiculous. And what kind of goods is Zimbabwe importing? That's right, weapons, guns. That's great. You know, and who do they look up to? George W. Bush. You know, the situation in Guantanamo Bay. That's great. Now let's throw people in a jail and don't charge them. Base it on false charges, and they had nothing to do with terrorism. They had nothing to do with the situation. They were the wrong people at the wrong time with the wrong name. To tell you how backwards that situation is, Nelson Mandela has only now been taken off the terror list. How ludicrous is that? So why should President Mugabe of Zimbabwe change? Why should he change? He sees that idiot in the White House doing the same fucking thing. You know, doing as he goddamn well pleases, throwing people in jail, no charges, intimidation, you know, and here the famous Republican mantra is, well, if you're not wearing a little flag lapel, you're not a patriot. You're not a true patriotic American. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad that's how we're judging our patriotism. Good job. So, you know what? The situation in Zimbabwe, yes, I would absolutely love if the Zimbabwe people helped them out. I don't think that's possible now. I think there's a situation that they are in dire straits. It is now up to the African Union. It is up to the countries in Africa, especially South Africa, especially President Mbeki of South Africa. Get off your duff and do something. When will you admit there is a problem? The ANC had never had an alliance with President Mugabe. You just made this mythical alliance up. Okay? Look at the history. Look at the legacy of the ANC and President Mugabe. Just look at it. I am so sick and tired of reading that in the news. Okay? Something has to be done. It is now up to the countries in Africa, the African Union, to step up and do something. Okay? If they don't do something, then guess what? Something else is going to happen. Something else is going to happen. And I don't think people like the results. That said, it is now in July. We now have, 6 months left of President Bush? So maybe then we'll get a president who actually practices democracy, who actually practices our Constitution, and maybe then it'll become a little more distasteful for dictators like President Mugabe to thumb their nose at everybody else and do as they please. God, I can only hope. Later.